It's the same voice I might use in a contract negotiation when an item isn't up for discussion. It's me! Subscribe! I'm in here! When I see a work for hire clause, for example, I might say, we don't do work for hire. Just like that. Plain, simple, and friendly. I don't offer up an alternative because it would beg further discussion, so I just make a straightforward declaration. That's how I played it here. I said, Joe's gone, you're talking to me now. Done deal. You can be very direct and to the point as long as you create safety by a tone of voice that says, I'm okay, you're okay, let's figure things out. The tide was turning. Chris Watts was rattled, but he had a few moves left in him. One of the bad guys went down to the basement and collected one of the female bank tellers. She disappeared into the bowels of the bank at some point, but Chris Watts and his accomplice hadn't chased after her because they knew she wasn't going anywhere. Now one of the bank robbers dragged her back upstairs and put her on the phone. She said, I'm okay. That's all. I said, who is this? She said, I'm okay. I wanted to keep her talking, so I asked her name, but then, just like that, she was gone. This was a brilliant move on Chris Watts' part. It was a threat, teasing us with the woman's voice, but subtly and indirectly. It was a way for the bad guy to let us know he was calling the shots on his end of the phone without directly escalating the situation. He'd given us a proof of life, confirming that he did indeed have hostages with him who were in decent enough shape to talk on the phone, but stopped short of allowing us to gather any useful information. He'd managed to take back a measure of control. Mirroring. Chris Watts came back on the phone trying to act like nothing had happened. He was a little rattled, that's for sure, but now he was talking. We've identified every car on the street and talked to all the owners except one, I said to Watts. We've got a van out here, a blue and gray one. We've been able to get a handle on the owners of all of the vehicles except this one in particular. Do you know anything about it? The other vehicle's not out there because you guys chased my driver away, he blurted. We chased your driver away? I mirrored. Well, when he seen the police, he cut. We don't know anything about this guy. Is he the one who was driving the van? I asked. The mirroring continued between me and Watts, and he made a series of damaging admissions. He started vomiting information as if we now refer to it in my consulting business. He talked about an accomplice we had no knowledge of at the time. That exchange helped us nail the driver of the getaway car. Mirroring, also called isopraxism, is essentially imitation. It's another neurobehavior humans and other animals display in which we copy each other to comfort each other. It can be done with speech patterns, body language, vocabulary, tempo, and tone of voice. It's generally an unconscious behavior. We are rarely aware of it when it's happening, but it's a sign that people are bonding, in sync, and establishing the kind of rapport that leads to trust. It's a phenomenon, and now technique, that follows a very basic but profound biological principle. We fear what's different and are drawn to what's similar. As the saying goes, birds of a feather flock together. Mirroring, then, when practiced consciously, is the art of insinuating similarity. Trust me, it mirrors signals to another's unconscious. You and I, we're alike. Once you're attuned to the dynamic, you'll see it everywhere. Couples walking on the street with their steps in perfect synchrony. Friends in conversation at a park, both nodding their heads and crossing the legs at about the same time. These people are, in a word, connected. While mirroring is most often associated with forms of nonverbal communication, especially body language, as negotiators, a mirror focuses on the words and nothing else. Not the body language, not the accent, not the tone or delivery, just the words. It's almost laughably simple. For the FBI, a mirror is when you repeat the last 3 words, or the critical 1 to 3 words, of what someone has just said. Of the entirety of the FBI's hostage negotiation skill set, mirroring is the closest one gets to a Jedi mind trick. Simple, and yet uncannily effective. By repeating back what people say, you trigger this mirroring instinct, and your counterpart will inevitably elaborate on what was just said and sustain the process of connecting. Psychologist Richard Wiseman created a study using waiters to identify what was the more effective method of creating a connection with strangers: mirroring or positive reinforcement. One group of waiters using positive reinforcement lavished praise and encouragement on patrons using words such as "great," "no problem," and "sure" in response to each order. The other group of waiters mirrored their customers simply by repeating their orders back to them. The results were stunning. The average tip of the waiters who mirrored was 70% more than of those who used positive reinforcement. I decided it was time to hit him with his name, to let him know we were onto him. I said, "There's a vehicle out here, and it's registered to a Chris Watts." He said, "Okay," not letting anything on. I said, "Is he there? Is this you? Are you Chris Watts?" It was a stupid question on my part. A mistake. For a mirror to be effective, you've got to let it sit there and do its work. It needs a bit of silence. I stepped all over my mirror. As soon as I said it, I wanted to take it back. "Are you Chris Watts?" What the hell could this guy say to that? Of course, he replied, "No." I'd made a boneheaded move and given Chris Watts a way to dodge this confrontation. But he was nevertheless rattled. Up until this moment, he thought he was anonymous. Whatever fantasy he had running through his head, there was a way out for him, a do-over button. Now he knew different. I composed myself, slowed it down a little, and this time shut my mouth after the mirror. I said, "No?" You said, "Okay." Now I had him, I thought. His voice went way up. He ended up blurting a few things out, vomiting more information, and became so flustered he stopped talking to me. Suddenly, his accomplice, who we later learned was Bobby Goodwin, came onto the phone. We hadn't heard from the second hostage taker until now. We'd known all along that Chris Watts wasn't acting alone, but we hadn't gotten a good read on how many people he had working with him on this, and now here was his unwitting accomplice, thinking our original police department negotiator was still handling our end. We knew this because he kept calling me Joe, which told us he'd been in the loop early on and somewhat less involved as the stalemate dragged on. At the very least, the disconnect told me these guys weren't exactly on the same page, but I didn't jump to correct him. Another thing, it sounded like this second guy was speaking through a towel or a sweatshirt, like he was biting on some kind of fabric even, going to all these lengths to mask his voice, which meant he was clearly scared. He was nervous, jumpy as hell, anxious over how the standoff was going down.